Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with another of these crazy bootleg figures that have only recently come out and begun hitting different sites like AliExpress and Amazon apparently, because that's where I found this one. This one was on AliExpress, but it was like around 50 bucks, which was just way too much. And then I found it on Amazon just the other day, and I did kind of want to check this one out in person because I was, kind of a fan of the Indominus. I felt like it was fairly fun, and this was the other one that came out right around the same time as the Indominus, which obviously is the T-Rex, and I just could not justify spending 50 bucks on it. On Amazon it was like 35 bucks, but then there was a discount that took it down to like 25 bucks the other day, so I'm like, okay, for 25 I guess I can check this one out and give you guys a review, because everybody seemed to enjoy the review for the Indominus, so I figured why not get one up for the T-Rex as well. Having it here in person, it's another one of those instances where, just like with the Indominus, it kind of looks like the Mattel Rex very clearly, but at the same time looks a bit different, so I guess we'll have to wait until we actually see it out of the box to truly tell. But you can see, as far as the box art goes, it states the Cretaceous period, light and sound action dinosaur, and also says Dinosaur Toys, has some images and stuff on here, and you can also see that the creator of the figure this time around is called Dinosaurs Islands Toys. So, yeah, I'm not really sure about that one. Here on the side, though, you can see that there's an image basically showing you that you have to attach the tail. It also actually shows you the Indominus right there. If you turn it around, you now have a sneak peek of the Indominus here on the back. This is the one that we have already reviewed here on the channel, so there is a video up if you want to see that. And then up on the top here, light and sound action dinosaurs. So let's pop this box open and check it out. So here is our T-Rex now assembled. It actually came with the tail off and the legs off, and you have to just pop them on, but there's what we are left with. Let's go ahead, readjust the camera here. And I actually dimmed the lights a little bit. It just seemed a little too bright for some reason with this one. But you can see again, it absolutely has the look and feel of the Mattel Bite and Fight Tyrannosaurus Rex, but very different. And I don't know that I would say this one is a straight up bootleg, because I don't think that a lot of the aspects of the sculpt are taken from Mattel's Tyrannosaurus, but I think it's very clear to me that they very much so based this on the Mattel version. Like, when it comes to the paint apps and the action feature, it's all very, very Mattel Jurassic World-ish. So it's hard to tell really at this point if it is in fact a bootleg as far as the sculpt goes. I would say not, actually, but the action features and everything are absolutely stolen from Mattel. But let's go ahead, jump to a closer look, and we'll check it out from there. So starting up here in the head sculpt of the T-Rex, you can see it sort of resembles a Jurassic World T-Rex. I mean, it definitely resembles a Jurassic World T-Rex, but it sort of resembles the Mattel T-Rex, but at the same time, not so much. If you're unfamiliar with the Mattel T-Rex, if you don't have any in person, you may look at this and be like, yes, it's absolutely the same figure. But if you are familiar with it, and if you do have it in your collection, you'll notice all sorts of differences on this one compared to the Mattel version. Even the way that these kind of like armored almost scoots moving up and over the head look is very different from the way a Mattel version looks. The skin texture as well is also quite different. There's a good bit of difference to the skin texture as you have scale detail moving along here, more like creasing and stuff as you move up into the palette, and kind of different, almost sort of similar to what you have here, but different type of skin texture up there. You can see the nostrils sculpted out. You can see some creasing there in the eye. And in general, I would say the detail of the figure isn't quite what I would see from a Mattel T-Rex. So it's fairly nicely detailed, but nowhere near as nicely detailed as you usually see from Mattel. You can see there's also some awkward kind of like, I don't know what it is, gloss added to the lower jaw in a few areas, which is kind of strange. It looks very sloppy because of that. One downside to the figure, it doesn't keep its mouth closed. The mouth is always in an open position until you push the button for the action feature. And one thing that's very goofy is, just like with the Indominus, you have a tongue hanging out here. And as you can see, the tongue is a rubber, a super, super flexible rubber, so that the mouth is kind of just like allowing the tongue to go crazy. And that's a really goofy sort of action feature. It also causes the tongue to be back further into the mouth than it really should be. You can see the detail inside the mouth is fairly generic overall. It's all given, though, a nice pinkish tone, has kind of a satin look to it, but not super glossy, not like you would see on Mattel. You can see the teeth, though, aren't perfectly painted. That one tooth is kind of lacking paintwork, though. But as you move through, you can see the teeth are painted with a yellowish tone, like a light yellowish tone. They're fairly big and bulky, but they don't look that bad, I guess. As far as the coloration goes, I would say it's absolutely almost spot on to what you see on the Mattel Bite and Fight T-Rex. You've got a dark brown for the primary body color. You have a different shade of brown, kind of like a chocolate brown, that circles around the eye, kind of runs up here, and then kind of overtakes the snout right there. But then you have the primary brown up here on the top of the head, moving back into the body. As you move back, you do see that chocolate brown sort of pick up again in the neck, and then run down through the course of the back, but of course ending as we reach the tail, also very Mattel-like. But as you lead down along the side of the figure, you can see again the detail looks okay for what it is. Exactly like right here really does look quite nice actually. But a large portion of the skin texture does look, you know, pretty decent as far as the detailing aspect goes. You can see we have this light tone for the lower jaw, but it doesn't run down into the neck or throat or anything. But you can see the detail in the throat looks okay. You do have this kind of chocolate bar brown striping down into the body. You can see that here as you lead back. Here's another area that is very much so not what you see on the Mattel T-Rexes. There's some very large, almost like very, very large sort of scoots running along the upper part of the back right there, which is kind of strange. You can see we've got two buttons here on the back that are very obvious that operate the jaw snapping action feature and the tail. But as you move down into the arms do look kind of Mattel-ish, but at the same time also a little bit weird and not quite Mattel-ish. Like they just look, the skin texture looks more rough and rugged than you would see on a Mattel T-Rex. And you can see also that the arm also kind of has a little bit of a satin shine to it like we saw in the lower jaw, which is strange. It does articulate forward and back, which is pretty nice. And as you move down into the hands, you can see the fingers are sculpted and the nails are sculpted as well, but they're not painted, unfortunately. But there is also articulation in the neck, but all of that has to do with the action features, so we'll get to that point when we get there. Moving down into the side of the T-Rex, I would say the detailing here looks pretty nice as well. And, you know, this is one area that you could definitely look at and say maybe it's kind of like the Mattel T-Rex. You know, offhand, I'm not noticing anything that is super obvious when it comes to that area of detail that looks different. Not like these scoots and everything up here. Down here, it could easily be mistaken as a Mattel T-Rex, or maybe it in fact is. I guess we'll have to see. But as you move up here, you've got more of those large osteoderms moving up and over the hip region right there. And as you lead down into the leg, you can see the muscle definition is nicely displayed there. The skin texture, again, continues to look pretty decent. You've got the knee, you've got a nice big bulging calf muscle back there. And as you move down into the foot, you've got some scoots moving down the toes. Again, I would say that this doesn't really look too much like a Mattel T-Rex foot sculpt to me because the detail just looks a little more generic than I'm used to when it comes to Mattel, though I could definitely be wrong. And just like Mattel, though, we don't paint out the dew claw. However, we do have nails painted on the three primary toes, which is a nice glossy black. But you do also have leg articulation, which can go forward and back. Pretty limited, honestly. You can see the same thing with the legs on the other side. They do stop and don't have a whole lot of range of movement, but I would say they have enough. And you actually also have the ankle swivels like you have on a Mattel T-Rex down there as well. But as you lead back up, you again have another area of like that weird kind of like osteoderm-like appearance. You have that brown kind of tapering off right there, and as you lead out into the tail, you've got a few areas of articulation moving out, which you can see. You know, you've got more articulation, honestly, than you would have for a Mattel T-Rex. And the tail is also very small in comparison to the body, so the proportions aren't really that great. Obviously, the feet are too big, the tail's too short, and the head is definitely too big. Like, it's actually pretty thick, too, which, oh boy, I don't know if we can get a nice shot of this. Let me see if I can get it into screen. So when you look at it from the front, you can really kind of see that the head is just very thick. Definitely thicker than you usually see on a Mattel T-Rex. If you turn the figure around, though, here's one area that is definitely going to look very non-Mattel-ish because we've got screw holes on the other side, and quite a few of them. There is definitely an abundance of screw holes over here. And again, you can also see that the little joint here where the tail kind of turns and stuff is definitely a little bit of a different shade of color. It's actually closer in color to what we have up here compared to the rest of the body, so it does stick out kind of like a sore thumb. But overall, it is kind of a cool looking T-Rex. Like I said, it's very obvious where they got the idea from. It was definitely Mattel, and you'll see even it gets worse, but I actually kind of feel like this might be their own individual sculpt. So when you actually grab the Mattel Bite and Fight T-Rex and you bring the two in and you look at them together, you can very clearly see that they definitely took the overall, color scheme and idea for the color scheme from the Bite and Fight version. But when you do actually look at the two together, if we kind of push them back a little further so we can get more of them in screen here, you can see that the colors are actually different. The tones of colors used are definitely like way darker on this newer bootlegish version rather than the older one. You'll also notice, and again, now I got to bring them back in closer to us, and maybe tilt the Mattel version a little bit, but you'll also notice that the head sculpts are drastically different. So I think it's very clear to me that whether some of the parts of the body were stolen from a Mattel T-Rex or not, I have no idea, but the actual head sculpt here is definitely different compared to the Mattel version. For sure, the upper part of the head, the lower jaw looks a bit more similar to what we see on the Mattel version, but at the same time different. Like if you look at those kind of scoots moving along the jawline, like where the lower jaw is, they definitely look different. They're bigger on this newer version compared to the Mattel version. They do have similar sort of scarring and stuff, but a little bit different as far as the placement goes. The scale detail looks kind of similar, but still at the same time a little different on the newer one compared to the Mattel version. And if you actually look at the detailing in the skin of the neck between both, it's very, very different, like night and day difference between this version and the Mattel version. And even if we look at the actual body, and if we can get both of their bodies in screen here, kind of, just sort of observe the two. Yeah, now I would say that they don't look very similar at all. Again, the texturing and the way it's sculpted out looks quite different. The pose is very similar, like they pretty much got the same pose overall, with the right leg taking a step forward, the left leg trailing. But let's look at the legs themselves again. Yeah, no, they look very different, actually. The detailing kind of looks similar. Like I could very easily understand why somebody might look at the legs and be like, yeah, that's definitely the same figure. But even the way that the kind of areas of muscle definition are sculpted out is different compared to the Mattel version, but looks very similar. I'm definitely not saying that the new version here is not bootlegged, because I think if anything, maybe the legs were, possibly. I think it looks different, so maybe there were some areas that were retooled on it, but it's definitely not exactly the same. And as you can see, the same can be said for the foot sculpt. Again, the foot sculpt on the Mattel version looks a good bit different compared to the foot sculpt on the bootleg version. Let me go ahead and turn the bigger light on. It's just going to make them a little bit bright, but kind of get both of the feet in screen here. You can see how different the feet look compared to each other. I think it's very obvious that this figure was, again, very clearly based on the Bite and Fight T-Rex from Mattel, but I don't think the sculpt has anything, honestly, to do with the Mattel T-Rex. Even if you look at the arms, this arm is like bent in and way more muscular looking than what you see on the Mattel version. The hands are definitely shaped differently and like positioned differently, even with the fingers. And the tail has, I would say, yeah, definitely one extra joint in the tail moving out compared to the Mattel version. But even the detailing in the tail is pretty different, though I could say maybe the tail is actually bootlegged from the Mattel T-Rex, because this looks very similar. Even the way that the tail, the tip of the tail kind of curves right there, it does have that here. And texturing wise, it does look pretty similar. Not perfectly the same, but kind of similar. So I think maybe the tail was either taken from the Mattel T-Rex or, again, just looks extremely close, but just having an extra joint of articulation. So I don't know. Honestly, it's a really tough call. And yes, I get that they can take figures like this and re-sculpt them and everything, but like there's a lot that's different on this version compared to the Mattel version. So I would say some parts of this newer version were probably bootlegged from the Mattel T-Rex, and if other parts were, it's not this particular version, but there are so many Mattel Tyrannosaurs out, it's hard to really look at just one and say, okay, yeah, that's definitely not bootlegged from a Mattel T-Rex, because it could have been. Maybe it was a different Mattel T-Rex, and I'm definitely not going to sit here and examine every Mattel T-Rex that has come out next to this one. But again, it is, at the same time that it looks very Mattel-ish, it is also quite a bit different. So I don't know, I guess you guys can be the judge on that one. I would say I think the majority of the figure is not bootlegged from a Mattel T-Rex, but some areas are questionable, like the legs and the tail. But like the head and the body are quite a bit different. Now we're going to go ahead and do the action features. Now here's, I'm going to turn the lights down a little bit. Here's where you're really going to see some similarities, and it does actually have noises as well. So you can see, oh, we've actually got numerous noises, but you can see how we have that same bite and fight action feature. You can also see how that goofy tongue waves. But another thing you may not notice is the fact that the body lights up like the Indominus Rex does. Now, of course, the bootleg Indominus did that as well, and it just keeps going. Look at it go. But no Mattel T-Rex has had a light-up body that I can recall so far. Only the Indominus had that. Let's go ahead and dim the lights even a little bit more to maybe kind of give you an idea of how that lights up. It's very, well, I guess I should take that back, because technically the Epic Attack T-Rex did have a light-up body, but no figures like this did, which you can see this one very clearly lights up and continues to light up for quite a while. The other action feature for this is the tail. So obviously we've got a tail strike, and then again you can see how the body continues to light up, just like it did with the first action feature button. So actually having a little bit more, I guess, as far as playability than the Mattel version did. This is also a bit smaller than the Mattel version, if you happen to notice when the two were there together. We'll go ahead and try to get a measurement on this one. So for a length from the snout to the tail, about 20.5 inches or 52 centimeters. And then for a height, now of course this could be different if you kind of pose the T-Rex standing up taller, because you could definitely do that. But in the position it's currently in, about 7.25 inches or about 18.5 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect Day human being next to our T-Rex, and you can see again it's pretty decently sized. It's pretty much the same size as the Indominus was, if you recall from that video, but it's also kind of similar in size to a Mattel T-Rex, but a little bit smaller, I would say. And then for another comparison, here is the Bite and Fight T-Rex back in here next to it, which you can see, you know, the fact that you see so much of the body of the Bite and Fight version back there shows you that it is definitely a little bit bulkier. If we actually come up and look at them from above, you can see they're kind of similar in length. So more body mass, and it's a little bit higher up on the Bite and Fight version. And the new version, the head is definitely a little bit bulkier than what you see on the Mattel version, but they are actually kind of similar in size, with the Bite and Fight version being just a little bit bigger. And just in case you wanted a comparison with one more Mattel T-Rex, here is the Extreme Damage T-Rex, which I often bring in for comparisons next to this bootleg-ish version, which you can see the Extreme Damage T-Rex is a little bit smaller than this version, but kind of similar in size at the same time. So this Dinosaurs Island Toys T-Rex is quite an interesting one. I would say that it's not as obvious in person whether or not this one is in fact a bootleg, but I would say it seems pretty likely, again, that some parts of this T-Rex were taken from a Mattel T-Rex. Either that, or when the company was like, you know what, we want to make a T-Rex, and let's just go ahead and copy Mattel's completely. And they tried their best to replicate it, again, as far as the action feature and the sculpt goes, as well as the paint pretty close to what you see on the Bite and Fight, almost exactly to what you see on the Bite and Fight T-Rex from Mattel, but obviously, again, not exact as far as the fine detail goes, the overall shape of the body. Like, there is definitely a whole lot different on this T-Rex compared to the Mattel one, but it is very clearly trying to profit off of the Mattel Bite and Fight T-Rex. Again, like the paint scheme, even if the paint apps aren't the exact same tone of color, they're very clearly based on that version. The action feature 100% stolen from the Mattel T-Rex. Same deal with the action feature of the tail, again, very Mattel-ish. And of course, the noises aren't exactly, I don't think, stolen from Mattel, but who knows at this point. I don't even know anymore. But there is some fun playability to the figure, I will give you that. You know, you've got some decent articulation through the course of the body. The action features seem to work well, and it does have a light-up feature, which is quite interesting. Not my own personal favorite part about it, but still something that some people may enjoy. So, overall, it's not the greatest T-Rex, that's for sure. It's not definitively a bootleg in my opinion, but it is most likely a bootleg of the Mattel T-Rex, just with some massive altering done to it and some different parts added. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, so in the comment section, definitely let me know what you think, if it is a bootleg or not. And of course, like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.